Hey, Yusuf Fodder here. So I have a lot of people who really would like a tutorial for the basics of how to use the rule editor in Battlefield 2042. So that's what this video is. We're going to give you everything you need to know to start creating your mods today by the end of this video. I want you to stick around through all of it because all of it's going to be very important, and I think you're going to really learn a lot. And of course, if you find value in this, make sure to click that like button so more people can get it in front of them, they can learn how to play, and we can all make great mods. But without further ado, let's go ahead and start making our first mod.
Fog Squad is on the LZ.
Okay, so to get started on our first Battlefield 2042 portal game, we're going to go actually right up here. We're at battlefield.com. We go Games, Battlefield 2042, About, Battlefield Portal right here. They'll take you to the screen sort of explaining what Portal is. We're going to click the big button right in the middle that says Start Creating. Now, if you're not logged in, it's going to ask you to log in here. Make sure you just log in with your account. But for me, I'm already logged in, and we're just going to go down and create something new. You can see down here, we've already got a few things that I've been working on. But we're going to create something new right here. When we click that, it's going to bring us to this page right here. This is going to be where all of our Portal games are actually made. And each of these main sections will have subsections underneath it. So the first few I'm going to sort of run through relatively quickly. If you want to see a full how-to on each of these modifiers and what they do and restrictions or anything like that, let me know. They're mostly self-explanatory, but there may be a couple that cause you some problems. So let me know down in the comments if you want to see that. But for us, we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a free-for-all gameplay. You can see right here, game mode free-for-all. Now you'll note these little gear icons or wrench icons here in the top. What those wrench icons mean is that the rules editor is enabled for team deathmatch and free-for-all right now. You notice that they are not on Rush, Conquest, and Conquest Large at this time. Now, I'm not sure if DICE is going to add those. I really hope they do, especially Conquest mode. But for right now, if you want to do the actual like coding, logic editor, rules editor, you have to do it in either team deathmatch or free-for-all. We're going to select free-for-all, and we're going to move forward. Next, we'll choose some map rotation. You just have to pick a couple maps. We're just going to go ahead and we're going to go Recycling Yard, Platform, Crawlerway, and Casual Operations. Okay, so those are 4 maps that will be in our game mode. Next up, game mode details. We're going to go ahead, we're just going to set this to 20 players. 32 is a bit much, but you can go all the way up to 128. But obviously, if you are playing on PC, that's allowed, not on console. So we're just going to go 20. 128 player free-for-all would be pretty ridiculous on a small map. The rest of these we could just leave the way they are. Now you'll notice at this point I can go up here and I can start naming and describing what they call an experience. An experience is what they call your mod. It's an experience. So here we're just going to go my first portal mod. Okay, and description, hey, look at me. I'm coding. Okay, and we'll click, oh, don't forget that. We'll click create. Okay, cool. So my first portal mod is now up, and it is now saved. So when we go back, if we go back to this portal, we hit start creating again, back to our page, we should see that mod right here, my first portal mod, right there. Excellent, right? And you can always come back and modify. From this point on, every time you make a change, you save it, you can always come back in and modify it on this computer or any other computer. So next up, we'll go to gameplay. This is all the modifiers we were talking about. We're going to leave this as a base standard game. We're going to have friendly fire off, just what you expect to have in all of these defaults here. Soldiers, we're going to leave them the same. Vehicles, we're going to leave them the same. User interface, we're going to leave the same. And AI, sorry, I don't know why I said AI that way. AI. So here, if you want to enable AI on your game, here's how you would do it. I will take a moment to talk about that. The AI type is the part that's probably the most interesting for you to learn. PvP AI basically means that these are AI that are standing in for players. So if it's a 20-player count game and you put the PvP AI on, then when you start the game, when you host it up, it will be you as one player and 19 other AI. If I choose PvE, it will be the amount of PvE AI that I have here, and they will not be replaced by players. So if I do PvE AI and then I add, say, 10, well, then that's going to be 10 AI in addition to any players that join the game. They are not replaced, whereas PvP AI is. And that's sort of explained right here. PvE AI is meant more as like a co-op experience, and there's actually ways that you can force it to where all the players will go to one team and say a team deathmatch, and all the AI will then go to the other team. And of course, the difficulty, you can beginner, intermediate, advanced. I think you can sort of figure the rest of that out. You can also change these what are called AI sync modifiers. All that means is you can make the AI better or worse than players, or have abilities that players do have or don't have. all by modifying in here. But if you have this checked, it's going to be the exact same modifiers that you had set up here, but for the AI instead. So next up, we're going to go to teams. So this is where you're going to select which of the eras that you want, or which of the game types you want to use for your Portal mod. I've been using Battlefield 3. It's the one I'm most comfortable with. But if you choose map default, what that's going to do is that's going to basically mean anything that is available on that particular map, or what that map is normally assigned to, say like Al Alamein would be Battlefield 1942, then it's going to utilize that. You can use that if you'd like to, but if you do that, you will not be able to custom select characters, weapons, attachments, vehicles, and nothing like that. You'll just be stuck with whatever is there on the map default. Since many of our Portal mods are going to require us to enable or disable certain weapons, characters, and attachments, I usually would opt to choose one and go with that. But it's up to you. You're the creator. You can do what you want. Choose Battlefield 3. And then for characters, I'm just going to leave all the characters on. Like I said, we're going to fly through this. If you guys want more lowdown on how to use any of these, just let me know down in the comments. So we're flying through. We have all the weapons enabled. All the attachments are currently enabled. Vehicles will all be default enabled, which in deathmatch you don't have vehicles anyway. Here's the gadgets that you can change if you want. If you want them to have launchers, no launchers, use whatever. And then rules editor. Okay, here we are. We've made it. Let's go ahead and click save. We're going to do that a lot. So here we are in the rules editor. It's the last one. What the rules editor is a logic or visual-based logic editor that allows you to create new logic entities and ways that your game is going to run. It can do things such as teleport players around, give players weapons, change their health, kill them, make messages appear, ping them on the map. You can do all sorts of things. And by combining a variety of these different functions that I'm going to show you, you'll have the ability to create a myriad of different games. If you want to see sort of in action, just go look at my gun game video that I made. It'll show you exactly how you can make a gun game, the classic gun game mode. And that was all made right here in the rules editor with a couple of things modified on the weapons. But for now, let's just go through the basics of what's in the rules editor. First off, you have this mod, looks like a big mouth. And you're going to see a lot of these sort of mouths. What that means is that everything, you notice the mod has straight edges. What that means is that everything within this mod will fall within here. All of our events, which are these that we're going to talk about here in a second, all of our rule events will fall under this mod. If you have these rules outside of here, or if you have, say, any of these sitting in here, nothing's going to happen with those. Those will not run. Nothing will happen. They're just floating on the ether. The mod works visually as there is a start at the top and everything will flow down. So if I put something into the mod, which has to be one of these rules things, come on, there we go. The mod will now look like it's eating it. If it's in the mod's mouth, then it's going to happen in the mod, right? I think that makes plenty of sense. So let's talk about rules. Rules are these purple things, or fuchsia, whatever, I don't know colors very well. And you can get more of them right here in this rules bar on the left side. What the rules are basically events that will trigger based upon an event that you have selected. Now, they're predefined events, and they're right here in this list right here, okay? So you've got event ongoing means that as the mod plays all the time, this rule will be running. And I know that because I clicked help. Sorry, that was a little fast. Let's do that again. You right-click, you hit help, it's going to bring up a menu and tell you all about everything that you need to know about this block. And in fact, every block here in the Portal editor is going to have a help menu associated with it. And these help menus are extremely helpful. In fact, there's several of these blocks that if you don't use the help menu, you won't be able to understand them at all. But because we're smart and we're using the help menu, we're definitely going to be able to understand them. So if you want to know what each of these events are, you right-click, go to help, and down below it says what it's going to do. So ongoing event will continually check if the condition tab has become true, which right now it defaults to true. And if so, anything within the actions will be executed one time. And then it will loop to the top and run it again and again and again, over and over and over again. So you can do a number of different things here within this ongoing event, but it's worth reminding yourself that you're always going to be running this at all times. It's going to be looping through constantly. So you don't want to do things in here unless it absolutely has to loop pretty regularly. If you leave things just running all the time, it can cause a lot of latency on your server. It can even cause it to crash. So that's your ongoing event, and that's what it's going to default all these rules to. By the way, you can name this rule, my first rule. Okay, cool. You can name that rule. That's just for you. That's a label that you know. You can change it to things like on game mode ending or on game mode starting. That's just what it sounds like, right? When your game mode starts, that's when it will run this one. It'll only run it one time when the game mode is started, aka your mod, aka your experience, whatever. They use a variety of different terms for it. On man down means when a player has been downed. If you look right here, on man down, where is it right here? When a player is forced into the man down state, aka you're laying there, right? On player deployed, just like it sounds like when you deploy from the loadout screen when a player dies. On player earned kill, when you get a kill or when a player gets a kill. Player irreversibly dead, so you were man down but now you're dead. When somebody joins the game, when they leave the game, if you get revived, and on a time limit being reached. Now, some of these, such as on time limit being reached, actually require a little bit of modification to our mod to be able to edit that, right? Because there's a time limit. Well, what time limit are we talking about? So that's when we can come over here and we can actually figure out, well, I see there's a time limit reached. Well, what's this time limit? I don't actually know. Maybe I should go up here in this search bar and search time. Oh, I see there's a set game mode time limit. Okay, so apparently we have the capability of setting the game mode time limit to some number of seconds. Okay, and you see how I did that? Between this search function right here and this help menu, you're going to get a lot of answers to every question you're going to have. I just want to point that out real fast. These are the two biggest tools that you can have, as well as, of course, getting help on Reddit and some of the Discords that are out there to help with this. But these are going to answer almost all your questions. If you're like, wait, how do I change that time limit? Just search time limit, find the set game mode time limit, and read about it. Pretty simple, right? Okay, I'm going to delete these and delete this. Let's go back to what we were doing. So let's talk a little bit more about this rule. So we're going to start this on game mode started, okay? Conditions, well, it's going to be true automatically, but if I wanted to make a condition, I can go over here to literals, meaning things that are always the way that they are. And in here within literals, I have a text, which isn't very useful here, but I thought I'd show you that. I could type text in there, right? So if I ever need to have text, this is literally what's going to be displayed to the message, sent to the player, whatever. That's the text. A number, okay, yeah, I could type in any number. If you put text in there, of course, it'll get rid of it. I put a number, it will literally be 561, no matter what that is. And then we get down here to Boolean. So what a Boolean is, or a bool you'll sometimes hear to call, is it's something that's always true or false. This is sort of the base of all logic in computing, comes down to bool, 1 or a 0, a true or false. And so when conditions are run, there has to be some blocks in here that will always either end up as true or false, right? So if I wanted to make this run every single time, I could just leave it blank. But let's say I didn't want to just leave it blank. Well, I could go to rules, condition, lock that right in there. See, now my rule is eating my condition thing, right? That means it's in there. If I set it right here, it's not doing anything. But now that I clicked in, it's within my mod, it's within my rule, and now it's the condition for this rule. And right here, I can set any condition, but I'm just going to lock a little true in there. If I read my help thing for condition, it says if this condition runs and it returns true, then it will run the action. Well, I just gave it true. But I could also do something getting real crazy, like equals instead. So equals, and I could say 561, and then Control-C, Control-V to copy and paste that right there, right? Well, this is always going to be true, right? 561 is always going to equal 561, but it evaluates that. And that becomes important if you do say something like get players, and we change this to say 4. Well, now we've actually created a real condition. The condition will check if these two numbers equal one another. Get players. Well, what's get players? Look here. Oh, get players returns an array of all players within the game. Is get players, the array, going to be equal to 4? I don't know. Wait, what's an array? Let's talk about an array real fast. Okay, so here we are in my very scientific, well, it's paint. It's paint is what it is. Okay, so let's talk about the difference between variables and arrays, because this can be really important as you're creating your mods. So you probably heard the term variable before. If you remember, what was it, geometry back in math class? A variable is something that you would say is like x, and eventually say like x equals 4, and then maybe you put 2x plus 3, and you'd have to solve this equation. I don't know if you remember all that, but that's what a variable is also in computing. Except for in computing, what a variable is it's just something that holds any value, right? So for here, we could say x equals whatever the heck we wanted to set it to. So x equals a, or x equals 2, or x equals hello, or x equals a certain player. That's a variable that we're going to set. We're going to name a variable, and we're going to set it to something. And I think that's pretty simple, right? A variable could be any kind of thing. It could be an object. It can be a text string. It could be a numerical. It can be a bool, you know, true or false. It can be an object as in like a player. It could be the game mode. The variable can hold all sorts of different information. Which variable you're using is going to depend upon what you need that variable to do for you within it. But there's another kind of thing called an array. An array is what we're about to build right here. So this array, as you could think, sort of a group of variables or a group of values. It doesn't necessarily have to be variables, but a group of values. So right now we have this array. We're going to call this my array. I like to do it this way because that's what I learned to do back in programming, and also that's how you do it in ARMA, so we're going to do it this way. So my array is this array right here. Right now, my array has nothing in it, but you see it has 5 slots for something. Now, luckily, in our Battlefield editor, your array will dynamically size itself, but in general computing, an array is any group of things that you could shove information into and then utilize that array, that grouping for a variety of different things. Let's say we want to make my array have A as the first value. So A as a value exists in array, my array, okay? I don't know if that makes sense, but this group is my array, and right now there's just a value of A in it. There's nothing else in this array currently. And if I were to check what's the count of my array, if I do a count on it, well, it's just going to be a count 1, right? Because there's only one value in it. But let's say I get this 2 and I also put it in the, oh, that's pretty bad. Let's try that again. Let's say I get my 2 and I put it right here. Well, then if I run the count, it's not going to be 1 anymore. Now the count's going to be, I'm pretty sure you guessed it, 2, right? Because now there's 2 pieces of information in my array. Hopefully that's making sense to you. Now, why would you want to shove a bunch of variables into an array? Well, because the array allows you to hold all sorts of different information that could be of great value to you, especially when you need a group of things. So let's say that instead of this being A and 2, this was actually an array that had player, oh, that's really big, way too big, player 1 in it, and then maybe it also had player 2, and it also had player 3, right? It has all your players in it. Let's just assume that that I spelled that right and this all fits, right? Let's say that that's what happened. So now you've got an array that has 1, 2, 3, 4 values held within it, and then this empty space we're not going to worry about. That's what an array is. These 4 values held within my array. Now, if I wanted to do something like get a random value from this array, because I want something to happen to a random player, then the randomizer could pick out player 3. So now, whatever I do, I'm going to do to player 3. But next time I run it, maybe I don't get player 3. Maybe next time I run it, I get, you know, player 2 or player 4. Or what if instead of players, these were different weapons? And I say, hey, select a random weapon from this group, and it just pulls out a random weapon and gives it to player 1. What if I pick a random player in my player array, and then I have a random gun array, and a random player gets a random gun, and then another random player gets another random gun? You start to see how we could do stuff like that. Or what if I say, hey, when I start my game, I want to just have this empty array, but then over time, as I kill players, I want to add them into that array. So we're going to have a random little red circle now be our player. Say, hey, when I kill that player, put it in my array of a player that I killed. And then when I kill the next player, which is a green circle now, it's a different player, right? Put it in my array. And then the next player will be orange. And now I put it in my array. And at the end of the game, I want to read out of every player I killed. So at the end of the game, when the game ends, I go back to my my kills array. Then I could say, hey, read out every single one of the players that I killed. And I'll say, oh, look, you killed the red player. And then you killed the green player, so green and orange. Oh, cool. At the end of the game, I could see exactly which players I killed. Because as I was getting those kills, I was feeding them into this array. So I say all that because a lot of what we're going to do in the Portal editor is going to have to do with these arrays and putting things in and out of the arrays. Okay, so getting back to our code now. Now that you know kind of what variables and arrays are, we can go in and we can start creating variables and creating arrays. So to create a variable, you just go into down here at the bottom, variables, manage variables, and then create new variables. So there's going to be 3 types of variables they call here. And in other forms of coding, you might have heard this is called scopes. Different scopes of variables. So if it's a global scope variable or global type variable, every single player anywhere will be able to see this variable and anyone can take actions on it. Anything can change it, anything can edit it. There's certain types of actions that can only happen on global variables, and there's also only types of actions that can happen on player and team variables. So if the scope of our variable is global, then obviously everyone can see it. If it's player, though, it's a variable that's held within that actual player, and multiple players can have the same variable name on their player because it's being managed locally on that player. And likewise for team, each team can have its own team variables. So for now, we're going to make a global variable. We'll call it my first variable. If I could type, that'd be great. So I create a variable. Great. If I ever want to get the current value of my variable, I can get the get variable global my first variable, right? That makes sense. It just gets the value of whatever variable seen here, my first variable. Since this is my only kind of variable, that's good to go. But let's say that I created a variable that was a player variable, my first player variable. Create that. Okay. Close this. I can, of course, get player, my first playable variable. But oh, look, there's a new little thing here. What is that? Let's look at our help thing. Okay. The variable can be selected. Okay, but what is that? Well, it looks like it has a little player thing on it, right? It looks like a little person. Let's go search player and see what we can find. Okay, player. Oh, okay, there's a few ways that we can get certain players, right? We could say event player. Perfect. Okay, so now player variable, my first player variable for the event player. Well, what's an event player? Okay, well, the event player is basically whoever you're running this current rule for. Okay, that might seem a little bit confusing, but we're gonna make our way there. Okay, basically, if we want to get, going back to this condition block, a certain variable for global, my first variable, and then we want to evaluate that. Oh, look, we could go here, boom. We have just created a condition that could be very reasonable. We're going to say run these actions if 4 equals whatever this variable is, my first variable. That could be the total number of kills. That could be how many rounds you've done. That could be how many minutes have passed. Whatever you've created and set this variable to be, it's going to check that against it. Now, I think that's enough about conditions. Let's go into actions where, everything's going to actually happen. So looking at actions, you will notice that only certain blocks will fit into actions. I cannot put this round block. I mean, it physically doesn't fit, right? But if you look at any of these yellow blocks, you can fit it in there. If we have this action, what it's going to do is allow us to just do things. It could be force a player to get revived from their man down position. It could be set player max health to higher than they were before. It could be all sorts of things. That's what all these actions are. So you can think of it like this. The event is what sort of event within the game will cause this. So on player deployed, when a player deploys out of the menu, it's going to run this event here. The condition is, do I actually do the actions, right? This is going to start. The condition is going to be, do I actually do the actions? Well, in this instance, we'll set it to true. So at all times, the condition will say, yep, we're good to go. This is always going to run every time a player deploys. And then our actions are going to be set player max health. So let's set a player's max health. We're going to set a player here in this one and a number for the health here. If I want to set it for a player, I have to define which player that is. Now that player could be a variable that I've already set, like say maybe my first variable here. I got my first variable. Maybe that's a player that's held in there. I don't know. That's up to you. Or it could be what's called event player. Now, event player is going to be one of those things that's going to drive you crazy because there's a few of these that say event and then something else. They're the event payloads. Event other player, and event team. I will shorten this to say the event player is whoever is causing this action to happen. So if you are the one who deployed, then you are the event player. If a different player is the one who deployed, then they will be the event player. Within the payloads, event other player is whoever is receiving that action. This specifically on player earned kill. The event player is the player who does the killing. The event other player is the victim. Usually other player is the victim or whoever receives it. And lastly, event team is for only things that have team events. Team events are not in free-for-all, right? There's no teams. So don't worry about that. We're just going to toss it. We don't need it for now. We're going to hit the delete button. For right now, we're going to say set max health on player deployed. And we're going to set it to a literal, a number. We can look here in the help and say, what's the health going to be? Well, it can't be higher than 1,000. It could be anything. Oh, look, here's a great example. Set max player health to 500. So we're going to set it to 500. So now, what we've created in all of this, let's delete all these extra blocks, focus up on what we've done. We have now created our first rule. When the mod starts, everyone drops into the game. We set how many players and what weapons and all that sort of stuff they have available to them. We go straight to my first rule. When they deploy, every time that any player deploys, they're going to get 500 max health. All we've done now is created some beefy players, right? We made it to where their max health is crazy high. That's not a particularly exciting game mode, but you can see how maybe sometimes if the condition was right, you'd want their health to be a little higher. In fact, let me do a couple changes in the back end and then show you when you might want this. Okay, so here I've made some changes. Now, in my first rule, on player deployed, so whenever a player deploys, it'll check this condition, right? The condition has this big green bubble that says equals. It's going to check if the two smaller bubbles inside it are equal. So we have the event player we talked about before. That's the player that's deploying. And then we have this variable. We get the variable for the god. Okay, what the heck does that mean? Well, if somebody is assigned as the god, we're giving him 500 hit points. That kind of makes sense, right? They're a much tougher player than anyone else, and so they're going to be the god. Now, this starts to make a little more sense. Not every player is going to do it. Every player who deploys will run this rule, right? Every time somebody deploys is going to run this one, but only if the player equals the god will actually set their max health to be 500. And in fact, we could do things like give the god extra ammo, or we can give the god the ability to run faster. I mean, we could do all sorts of things for the god. And now suddenly we have a game mode. Maybe we want to have a game mode where one player is just better than everyone else. And if you get a kill on the god, you get a ton of points, and the god only gets 1 point per kill. Then we see, you know, your one randomly assigned god, is he able to defeat them? I don't know. That's just a game mode that I just thought off the top of my head based upon what's in here. And that's, I mean, all we really need to make this a game mode is to create another rule that assigns who the god is. Let's go ahead and do that. So, to create a new rule to assign who the god is, let's go here. We're going to go to our rules. We'll grab another rule sync. See, we're just going to click it right above this one. See, it just clicks right in there. Okay. And we're going to call this one assign god. Okay. Sorry if god bugs you. I get why that might happen. On game mode starting. Okay. Condition. We're going to leave this empty. It'll just always run. Every time game mode starts, it's going to run this one. You could do condition true if you want. And then in actions, we are going to go random. We're going to find a random value in array. We want to set that off to the side. Let's go player, get players. Okay. So what do we do here? Random value in array, get players. What does that mean? Okay. Well, we talked about what arrays were, right? I don't know if you remember this diatribe here about arrays, right? It's a group of things. And the group of things that we're checking right here is get players. It's all the players within the game. You'll be using this one all the time. All the players within the game. So now you're selecting a random player. Well, what do we want to do? We want to set that random player as the god, right? So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to go down here to variables, and we're going to go set variable, right? And we're going to click it into here. Remember, only these yellow ones can click in here. They can't click into there. Only conditions go in there. Only variables can go in here. And what we're going to do is we're going to set this variable, the god, right? When we look at set variable, it says set the value of a variable. The first input here is any variable. Second one is any type. So we're going to set the god to a random value in array. So get players. So what we're doing now, we run the rule. Game mode's going to start. Conditions, we left it empty. It's going to always run every time game mode starts. So once per round. Actions, set variable, the god, as one of the players within get players. A random one within all players. So some random player will now be set as the god. And then, every time a player deploys, it's going to check, is this person the god? If they are, let's give them 500 hit points. And then we could do other things. We could go you know, to ammo, and we could say set inventory ammo, Control C, Control V to copy and paste. That person, we can go player inventory slots, primary weapon, and we can take this number, copy and paste this literal into here, 500. So now their primary weapon has 500 rounds, and we can also, you know, copy and paste this and click it in there. We say also your secondary weapons are going to have 500 rounds. We could say you've got, I mean, just way more throwables than is even reasonable. So we can do that, right? And suddenly this person is becoming rather scary. And they get this every time they deploy, right? And so what we've done here is we've created a small game mode. Within our mod, we run this rule when the game starts. We get a random player to set him as God. And then in the conditions section, we go and we check, is this person who's deploying on this one, whenever he deploys, is it the God? If it's the God, let's set this player, the event player, right, the one who ran this event, their health to 500. We're going to set we could do this instead of doing the God. We could also, of course, copy and paste event player into here to set that. In fact, it's probably better scripting if we want to do it that way. Let's do it that way, because that's going to be whoever is doing this deployment. But remember, this won't run unless that person's the God. So these will keep being good for us there. Okay, and then we could even say do another one. Let's grab this rule. Okay, we just copy and pasted this whole rule. Sorry, let me do that again. That's Control Z to go backwards. That's just like anything else. It's the undo button, right? Control Z. So I selected the rule because I can move this rule around, right? All the things that are stuck in its mouth, in other mouth, I guess, will move with it, right? Same thing here. If I grab all these, it'll move with it. If I grab one down here, it'll move that. That's makes sense. Control C to copy, Control V to paste. Put this down below. Why did I copy and paste that? Well, on player earned kill, we're going to go this. You notice I named all these the same thing, but I can't name my variables the same thing. Those have to be different, but these are just your little text bubbles to tell you what these do. So we're going to say kill rule. On player earned kill, it's going to be basically every time the player within this earns a kill, it's going to run this condition, right? Does the player who got the kill, is that God? Okay, if it is God, then what's going to happen? We're going to remove that. And we're going to do something like go into our gameplay, and we're going to set game mode score. What's game mode score? We right-click, go to help. Sets the game mode score of the provided player or team ID. So we're going to be doing a player, right? It's going to be the game mode score of our event player. We talked about that's the person who's causing this to happen, the kill. And what are we going to set their score as? Well, here is an interesting lesson. If I set their score as 1, grabbing this and put it there, okay? Every time the God player gets a kill, his game mode score will go to 1. It will not increase by 1. It will not decrease by 1. It will go to 1. In fact, the God can't win the game right now because all I'm doing is going to 1. Okay? That's a problem. What I need to do is I need him to increase his score by 1 every time he gets a kill. So if I want to do that, what I have to do is get his current kill count, his current score, I should say, and add 1 to it. So we're going to do a whole bunch of blocks here that kind of make that a little bit confusing, but I'll show you real fast. We're going to go add, search add, okay? We got this green bubble. It's going to add these two values together, okay? So add. We know we want to add 1. What are we going to add it to? Well, we're going to get the current score of our player, the God, to put in there. So let's search score. See, I told you this this search thing's pretty good. We're going to get the game mode score. That's going to get whatever the current score is of the player here. We're going to copy and paste the event player. And we're going to click it right in there. So what we have now is every time the player earns a kill, the event player here is going to set their game mode score to this number, whatever their current score is, plus 1. And of course, we can make that plus 5 if we want. We can make that plus 10, whatever. The game score, the one that when you hold tab and you look in free-for-all, the score that they have is going to increase by 10 every time just the God gets a kill. But if they're anyone other than the God, they're be getting 1 per kill, right? So maybe that's a way that you can make the God differ. He just gets more kills. This seems a little bit unfair. The God should win every time here, really. But that's a way that you could do that. And this is how you have to do things in your code. Because if you just set an exact number, if you just set their game mode score to 10, it will happen every single time you run this. It will set it to 10. It will not add anything to it. You have to use this add block to be able to set their game mode score to 10 higher. not the same. So in this, we've done a lot of things. We've talked about mods. We've talked about rules within that mod. We've talked about how you can set conditions where we'll only run if this condition is true. For instance, if this particular player is the one who caused this rule to run. And we've talked about what actions you can run. Now, there's a ton of other actions. There's a ton of other conditions. There is an immense amount of things you can do. For instance, let me pull up my gun game and what that looks like right now. So you see, there's a lot of stuff going on in gun game, which I ran through briefly in my other video. But you can see sometimes you have stuff like if, and else. You've got sometimes replacing inventories, and you have bubbles inside bubbles inside bubbles, right? Well, it seems overwhelming, but when you break it down to its core parts, and this is a key to any programming language you're ever going to work with, you break everything down to its smallest parts. Even this right here, even this very complicated one that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers of bubbles can be broken down. This one is a condition that says if these two things are the same, it will be true, right? It's going to say true. It's going to run whatever's down here. If these two things inside here are greater than or equal to, this will be true, right? So we're comparing this greater than or equal to here and this less than. If this is true and this is true, then we'll go on. If this is false and this is false, then we will also go on, right? So, okay, and then we're going to get the variables, we're going to compare some things. Like these, we could break these down to smaller components. It's really overwhelming when you look on the whole, but the very basic amount, we're getting what the current kill count is for the event player. We're checking if that is greater than 4, and then we're also saying if it's greater than 4, but if it's also less than 17, so if it's between 4 and 17, if both of those are true, we're going to do these things. Else, we're going to do this stuff. Wow, we've gone over a lot, and I hope that this has been helpful to you. If it has, first off, thanks for sticking around. Secondly, I ask that you click that like button, you thumbs up. You let me know if this was helpful to you in the comments. Now, this is a basics. I know it seems like a lot to go through, but this was just a basics tutorial. We made a tiny little mod that honestly would be not that much fun to play, but we've got all of the basics on how we can actually start a mod. And you can go in right now, knowing what you know, and you can make your own mods in Battlefield. You can start making and hosting your own Portal mods. Maybe you'll make the next great mod. Maybe that mod will turn into a game someday like Counter-Strike did. Who knows? Team Fortress 2, that was a mod. That started as a mod.Maybe not in an editor like this, but look at how successful that went on to become. So think about that and how this could be the stepping stone of a whole career for you if you want to, or it could just be you diddling around and having a little bit of fun. But with what you know here, you can go forth and you can create mods. Now, there are definitely some more advanced things that I'd love to teach you. And if you're interested in learning more advanced techniques, I'm going to need lots of thumbs up, lots of likes on this, and I need you to tell me in the comment section that you got this far in the video and that you want the advanced tutorial, because I will give you advanced tutorials on if-then statements, how to do comparisons, lots of logical tricks you can run, all sorts of things that I have learned, the advanced tips to get to that next level to create the most complicated and advanced mods that are going to require lots and lots of fine-tuning to be able to make them work. If you want to see that, then definitely let me know down in the comments. But until then, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. My name's Useless Fodder. I stream over on Twitch. I play tactical games. If you like that, I've also been doing some Portal modding. Of course, I've got my Discord if you want to come and ask me questions, discord.gg/uselessfodder. I'm also on Twitter, Instagram, pretty much everywhere else with the name Useless Fodder, Reddit, everything you could think of. I'd love if you subscribe to the channel. I'd love to see you again here on the channel, where we talk about tactical games, and I do my best to teach people how to do things in my favorite games. I've got Insurgent Sandstorm tutorials, I've got some Arma tutorials coming out, and of course, I'm going to keep running through Portal. In my next video, I'm going to show you guys how to make a pretty awesome mode. It's relatively simple. You can use just the techniques that we have in here to create it, called HVT, and I think you guys are really going to like that one. So definitely stick around for that, and I hope to see you over there. Useless Fodder, out.